Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Friday, January 1st, Pope Francis prays for peace in Yemen at the Angelus. A church bell stolen by the Nazis is set to be returned to a parish in Poland. And the director of UK charity CAFOD reflects on the poignant message of hope that this Christmas season has offered us. In the Vatican, I'm Christopher Wells. Our top story today, in remarks following the Angelus, Pope Francis expressed his gratitude to all those in every part of the world who, respecting the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, have promoted moments of prayer and reflection on the occasion of today's World Day of Peace. The Holy Father also remembered Bishop Moses Chikwe of Nigeria, who was kidnapped along with his driver on December 27th. He invited the faithful to pray for them and for all those who are victims of similar acts of violence in Nigeria, that they may be returned unharmed to freedom, and that dear country may regain security, concord, and peace. The Pope also made a strong appeal for peace in Yemen. He expressed his sorrow and concern at the further escalation of violence in that country, which is causing numerous innocent victims. And he prayed that efforts will be made to find solutions that will allow peace to return to those tormented peoples.
Fratelli e sorelle, pensiamo ai bambini dello Yemen, senza educazione, senza medicine, affamati. Preghiamo insieme per lo Yemen.
Brothers and sisters, he exclaimed, let us think of the children of Yemen, without education, without medicine, hungry. Let us pray together for Yemen. As we enter into the new year, Yemen remains the largest humanitarian crisis in the world, as Nathan Morley reports.
According to UNICEF, more than 24 million people, that's some 80% of the population, are currently in need of humanitarian assistance in Yemen. That includes more than 12 million children. The conflict in the country has been raging since 2014, when, working with forces loyal to the former president Ali Abdullah Saleh, Houthis seized much of the nation, including the capital Sana'a. Since then, more than 100,000 people, both fighters and civilians, have lost their lives. Children continue to be killed and maimed in the conflict, whilst the damage and closure of schools and hospitals has disrupted access to education and health services, leaving children even more vulnerable and robbing them of their futures. Acute malnutrition rates amongst children under the age of 5 are the highest ever recorded in Yemen. To make matters worse, with the coronavirus still spreading, the country is tackling an emergency within an emergency. Since the conflict escalated in March 2015, the country has been described as a living hell for children there. And although humanitarian support is critical to preventing famine and saving lives in the country, the United Nations says that significant funding shortfalls are threatening to cut lifeline food assistance and life-saving malnutrition treatment services. For Vatican News, this is Nathan Morley reporting.
In his first Angelus reflection of the new year, Pope Francis focused on the importance of entrusting ourselves to the motherly gaze of Mary, through whom all things are possible. Francesca Merlo has this report.
Pope Francis opened his first Angelus of the new year by urging the faithful to join in placing ourselves under the maternal and loving gaze of Mary Most Holy. The Pope explained that the day's liturgy celebrates Mary as Mother of God. Pope Francis explained that throughout our journey along the paths of time, the reassuring and consoling gaze of the Blessed Virgin Mary is one of encouragement. This gaze ensures that this time given to us by the Lord can be one that is spent for our human and spiritual growth, a time to iron out hatred and divisions, to feel that we are all more brothers and sisters, to build and not to destroy, and to take care of one another and of creation. Pope Francis went on to note that the painful events that have marked the path of humanity in the past year, especially the pandemic, teach us how necessary it is to take an interest in the problems of others and to share their concerns. Each one of us, the men and women of our time, is called to make peace a reality every day and in every area of life, extending a hand to a brother or sister in need of a word of comfort, a gesture of tenderness, a helping hand of solidarity. Peace is not only the absence of war, continued the Pope, but a life rich in meaning, planned and lived in personal fulfillment and fraternal sharing with others. Then that peace so longed for and always endangered by violence, selfishness and wickedness becomes possible and attainable, he said. Concluding his New Year Angelus reflection, Pope Francis prayed that the Virgin Mary obtain for us from heaven the precious good of peace, and expressed his hope that peace will reign in people's hearts and families, in places of work and leisure, in communities and nations. I am Francesca Merlo.
Earlier on Sunday, Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin presided at the Mass in St. Peter's Basilica for the solemnity. Pope Francis, who would normally have celebrated the liturgy, was unable to do so due to a painful sciatica, which also forced him to be absent from Thursday night's Vespers ceremony. The Holy Father, however, was able to prepare a homily, which was read by Cardinal Parolin. The Pope's reflections focused on 3 words from the day's readings: to bless, to be born, and to find, which he said find their fulfillment in the Mother of God. From Mary, who brings us the blessing that is Jesus, he said we learn the importance of blessing, of speaking well of others, of society, and of ourselves. Jesus was born of a woman, said St. Paul in the second reading, and in these few words, Pope Francis said, he tells us something amazing, that the Lord was born like us. Mary, he said, is not only the bridge joining us to God, she is much more. She is the road God traveled in order to reach us, and the road that we must travel in order to reach Him. Mary also teaches us how to keep our hearts pure, how to cultivate our interior life and our prayer, the Pope added. This leads us to cherish other people, the world, creation. This new year, he said, will be a good one if we take care of ourselves, as Our Lady cares for us. The third verb Pope Francis reflected on is to find. At the first Christmas, the shepherds, led by grace, found God not in miraculous signs, but in a simple family. We too need grace to find Jesus, and once we have found Him, we must not lose sight of Him. In this new year, we are called, like the shepherds, to be active in order to receive grace. In this new year, Pope Francis said, it would be good to find time for someone. Let us ask for the grace, he said, to find time for those who need someone to listen and show concern for them. The Pope said, if we can find time to give, we will be amazed and filled with joy like the shepherds. Pope Francis concluded his homily by consecrating the new year to the Mother of God. He prayed that Mary might care for us, bless our time, and teach us to find time for God and others. Elsewhere in the world today, a 16th century church bell will be returned to a Catholic church in southern Poland, some 77 years after the German Nazis plundered the bell in World War II. Regional correspondent Stefan Boss reports that the bell will be given permanently on loan by Germany.
Church bells ringing across heavily Catholic Poland. And in the near future, the St. Catherine's Church in Sławoczyce in southern Poland will be able to ring in the new year with its original church bell. It's dating back to 1555. Parishioners here began searching for the church's precious centuries-old bell 2 years ago. It was eventually found in the German city of Münster. The Polish church priest Marian Bednarek said the 400 kilograms bell was listed in a book. The discovery comes as a New Year's miracle. Church records show the German Nazis melted down some 80,000 bells to make weapons or ammunition during World War II. But the now 465-year-old bell from Sławoczyce was stored for decades, unnoticed, with 2 other bells in a courtyard at Münster's main Catholic church. They were among the relatively few bells that had not been melted down for their metal content. The British military authorities banned the return of church bells to the east. Instead, they were loaned out to parishes across the old West Germany. But times have changed. When the church bell returns to St. Catherine's Church, it will be on permanent loan, as officially it is now owned by the German government. Yet there is a delay with transporting the historic cargo due to the coronavirus pandemic. However, at least some Polish parishioners say that after 77 years of waiting, another month or so doesn't really matter. For Vatican News, I am Stefan Bos, reporting.
And finally, CAFOD is the official aid agency for the Catholic Church in England and Wales. It's part of one of the largest aid networks in the world and reaches people and communities in need across the planet with a presence in 165 countries. Not only has it been there in situations of conflict, natural disasters, famines, and climate change, in 2020, together with its partners, it's been on the forefront of the COVID-19 pandemic, responding to challenges in the most critical situations. CAFOD Director Christine Allen reflects on the poignant message of hope this Christmas season offers, and speaks with Lydia O'Kane about how she's been inspired and encouraged by the work and dedication of so many people.
As we look around at the chaos of our world, I feel that the Christmas story is reminding us this year more poignantly than ever that God is there particularly for those who are on the move, who don't have a roof over their heads, the ones that are much less comfortable, the ones like the shepherds who were very much pushed out of society. God is there specially for them. And in the ways that this year we have all learnt what it means to say Black Lives Matter, that is what God is saying. It is the, if you like, the preferential option for the poor. It is those who are excluded, those who are oppressed, those who are powerless, that God is here especially for. And of course, God loves all people, but that's what the message is that we are to take away this Christmas.
I mean, looking at, going back to the year that we've had, maybe just starting with the pandemic, we've seen the pandemic in so many countries, but we've also seen the pandemic in countries that lack the real infrastructure to actually deal with it. And CAFOD, and I'm sure your partners on the ground, that obviously has been a huge challenge. But not least that, I mean, there's been natural disasters in Latin America. We've seen conflict continuing Yemen and also in Ethiopia. For an organisation like CAFOD, and for yourself, who's head of CAFOD, has it been a kind of an overwhelming year in the sense of having to deal with so many different issues at one time?
It has felt like the perfect storm at times, yes. It has felt extremely challenging. It has felt that we have been stretched beyond our limits. But I've also been heartened by the sheer level of generosity and support that we've had from the Catholic community in England and Wales. It's been incredible to see how CAFOD staff and volunteers and our partners around the world have just become so creative in responding to the needs that people have. And that's the issue. We've never stopped trying, and I take my hat off to every single one of them.
And that was CAFOD Director Christine Allen speaking with Lydia O'Kane of Vatican News. And that brings us to the end of this New Year's Day edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, be sure to visit our website at www.vaticannews.va. Many thanks to our sound engineers in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Christopher Wells.